I don't even know where to start. If you're going to make it dumb, at least make it funny. That's my review. Close out the video. We're done. Subscribe. I wasn't going to talk about Fire Emblem Engage, and then I forgot about it. Like, I completely forgot that I played it. I found it to be quite underwhelming, honestly, and not in a way that is necessarily interesting for content. But as I thought about the game more and more, I was like, no, I have a lot to say. Actually, the game has been out for a couple months now. I am talking about the entire thing, so if you don't want to be spoiled, this video is perhaps not for you. The general premise of Engage is that we, the player, are following Alir's story. They are the divine dragon. They're waking up after a 1,000-year sleep, coma, whatever. They have amnesia. They don't remember anything. And they wake up in this world at war where these emblem rings are the be-all, end-all MacGuffin that we care about, right? The rings summon heroes from the past, and so it serves like a fan service-y kind of function because we see old characters, and if you're like a long time fan of the franchise, that's cool. And then it adds a new layer to the strategy experience because you can summon these rings and they just give your character a really big boost or a new ability or both. So they're kind of busted, but they're fun. This video is going to be mostly about the plot and the characters. I do want to touch on the gameplay quickly just because I don't have as much to say. And then we can really sink our teeth into the meat of this video. Overall, the game is quite fun. I liked the addition of the emblem rings. I don't really like them as characters, like agents in the story, but they're a fun new mechanic. Like, even if they weren't characters from previous games, the idea of summoning aid into battle at any time and getting superpowers and a new suite of weapons and all this stuff, it's very cool. I like that they brought back the weapon triangle in this game because they removed it from Three Houses. I like that it's back. I do wish that they brought back the ranged triangle weapon that existed in Fates, but there are a lot less characters that use knives, so I'm kind of okay with it. I do think having like the gauntlet arts-based characters having such an advantage over every ranged unit, like maybe that's a little bit broken, but just with the unit distribution of the game, I never felt that it was a problem. I really liked that each ring had a special paralogue that recreated a map from their original game. And they were some of the most interesting maps that Engage has to offer. I loved that they used Arena Ferox from Awakening as the introduction to this idea. You know, a lot of people got into the franchise with Awakening. Awakening is one of the most accessible titles to this game, except not anymore. They're closing down the 3DS eShop on, I think, March 27th. So if you want Awakening, if you want it digitally, you should act fast. There's a lot of activity in the building today. Lots of in and out. What is going on? I'm closing my curtains because it's becoming such a distraction because there's so much activity outside. I hate living in a ground level apartment. Curtains are closed. I don't know. You can probably tell the light is like changing. Touches like these indicate to me that so much of the thought and creativity with this title went into the battling. Because normally I enjoy the strategy component of Fire Emblem, but the social sim element is like really what captivates me. Also the fantasy setting, you know, intrepid band of adventurers goes out, saves the world. Tried and true premise. You don't need to reinvent that wheel. But yeah, in the last few Fire Emblem titles, I usually found that the social sim elements and the character writing and narrative writing and the battling are usually all pretty on par for me. I find that they all complement each other. With Engage, I think the battling is like leaps and bounds ahead of any other writing in this game. I think the battles are really good. With that being said, let's just dive into the plot. This is, I guess, like a comprehensive plot synopsis of Engage. We'll talk about characters along the way as I see fit. As discussed previously, the game opens with Alir waking up from a 1,000-year sleep, and they have no memories of their life before waking up in this moment. In this dream, they're fighting with the main villain of the game, but they can't identify them. They don't know who they are. All the other royals are there fighting too. They're all fighting with their emblem rings. Alir wins, they save the day, all is well, and then they wake up. Because they've been asleep for 1,000 years, they have a generation of attendants who have been watching over them the entire time. So the first characters we meet are Clan, Fram, and Vander. They're protecting Alir because they're a divine dragon, which is just a race of dragons in this game. The wards set the tone for this game as like quite lighthearted and unserious, and there's even a line where I was like, oh, the writing is self-aware, like they know what they're doing.
Shall we fight them? As you wish, Divine One. You whose bravery knows no equal.
No, let's run.
Huh?
We haven't the slightest idea who they are, and we don't know how they came to be here. Also, They worry me for some reason. So, we run.
Well, did the Divine Dragon really command me to retreat?
Okay, get to safety.
We'll keep them distracted for you.
You must have great eyesight, Yunaka.
Yeah, I have a killer's eyes.
What was that?
Killer eyes! I've got killer eyes!
Usually Fire Emblem's humor comes from like quirky character writing and, you know, silly situations, but usually it's not really from explicit comedy writing. So tonally, that was a little bit different from previous games. So I was expecting a different product based on these opening hours. Anywho, there's a little skirmish with these zombie guys, and then we meet Alir's mother, Lumera, who is like the divine dragon, and she can transform into a dragon. There's a lot of exposition about the rings and why they're so important. To set up the world, Lithos is like an island in the middle, and then it's surrounded by a ring of land outside. Lithos has some of the rings, and then they've divided the land between the 4 kingdoms that are on this like ring. And then there's also just like a casual kingdom that has been sunken into the sea. We don't need to talk about it. Anyways, we meet Lumera, lots of exposition. This world is all about the rings, baby. Lumera can turn into a dragon. Alir cannot. It's not inherently bad, but it is a little boring. You know what I mean? Let me turn into a dragon, please. A couple chapters in, the palace gets attacked and Lumera dies, and it's funny because it's really heavy-handed and it's unearned because it happens within the first couple chapters of the game, and the writing is so clunky and bad because it's literally like, I had amnesia. I just woke up. I don't know anything about anything. And then this like person comes over and they're like, hello, I'm your mother. I'm a dragon. So we live for a super, super duper long time. I've been waiting this whole time for you to wake up. I know you don't know me, and that's okay. I hope we can cultivate a relationship. I don't know you, but all of a sudden I feel an overwhelming emotional attachment to you, even though we haven't talked and I have no memory. Cool. Amazing. And then the palace gets attacked and then she dies. There's this like really long drawn out scene where like Alir is like crying and everyone is like standing to the side being like, this is uncomfortable. And then the mom is like, you have to get all the rings because some of the rings got stolen. And she's like, you have to go get them back. And we learn that if we have all the rings together, we might be able to revive her. So there is a personal stake in this journey. But this moment was just like so unearned and boring and bloated and long. Like it just didn't need to happen. I get that for narrative reasons, you need to take out the strongest character. There were other ways for this to have happened. Maybe they kidnap her and part of the mission is a rescue. I don't know. Like she just didn't need to die. You know what I mean? It didn't serve. So the rings have been divided between the 4 kingdoms. We're on a fetch quest to go get them all. So first we go to Firene, which is the kingdom of abundance. So here we meet the crown prince Alfred, who has a muscle fetish, Etier, who has a muscle fetish, Boucheron, who is fueling the muscle fetish, Louis, who's probably a pervert, but we don't know. They maybe changed it in the translation. Art is dead or whatever these weird censor people are saying. I wasn't going to talk about it. I'll touch on it briefly. If you're upset at the censorship of a commercial product because you think it's the death of art, I don't believe you. I just don't. Because people are mad that there's not even censorship, but like translation differences, which happens with everything that gets localized. I don't know. Some people get like really up in arms, and I don't think it's an accident that this conversation always surrounds what children wear in video games. And then we have Chloe, who's into folk food and fairy tales. I don't know if you're gathering, but these are not personalities. Having an interest does not a person make, especially like when you have one character who's literally like, wow, there's a couple walking over there. Almost like a fairy tale. Like, take a shot every time they say their specific quirk out loud.
Chloe, listen up. I have something that's gonna blow your mind.
What's got you so riled up?
You've heard of the Fountain of Youth, right? You know, from those fairy tales you love?
Oh, those are some of the best stories. But why do you ask?
Brace yourself. I got my hands on the only map to its hidden location.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Especially since the Fountain of Youth isn't real. Why would it be on a map?
They're just saying their quirks back and forth. That's all the support conversations are. They're not very interesting. Saline, the princess, she's 3-dimensional because she has goals. She has a personality. She has an attitude. She doesn't have one crutch that she needs to keep holding on to. All of these other characters that I just mentioned, they all kind of feel like robots because they're kind of just walking and saying the same thing, like a doll on a string. Celine feels like she lives in the world. She has a sense of duty and she acts like she's royalty, and she cares a lot about her brother. Like, she feels like an actual character. And I have to admit that some of the other characters probably have more to them than what we see when we're introduced to them. But you can only get to that content if you're working really hard for it, because you only find out these things in support conversations, and those are really hard to get in this game. Like, we learn Alfred was a sick kid, and that's why he's so obsessed with health, because he wants to be strong and he thinks it'll help him live longer and protect himself. Like, that's actually a character. Characters need to have motivations, funnily enough. Otherwise, we can't get behind them. So it's just frustrating that the content is locked behind this feature that is really difficult to overcome. Building support points in this game is quite difficult, more difficult than it has been in previous Fire Emblem entries. The frustration that comes with that is content becomes inaccessible. I spent 60 hours playing this game. I feel like I didn't get to know very many of these characters, and for support conversations, I saw maybe half. And even for characters that I was really actively using, I didn't see all of their supports all the way through to A rank, especially with Alir. I had to, in the last couple chapters of the game, I was like buying gifts to try and build up the support points, which is annoying because I normally don't have to do that in any other Fire Emblem title. Anyways, the country is being attacked. We meet their mom, who I actually quite like. I think her name is Ev. She's cool. She has a good line in her standoff with the Four Hounds, who are the big bad's henchmen.
This is the part where you tell me where you've got the ring stashed in here.
Who's to say?
You leave us no choice. By virtue of your silence, we will now kill every living soul in this castle one by one.
The Four Hounds are kind of boring. I'm just going to put up a picture of the Four Hounds here. If you had to guess, just by looking at this photo, that like two of them are for sure evil, and two of them really aren't all that bad, who are the two that you think are like mega super duper evil, and which two are like not for the cause? If you guessed the hot ones with the tattoos and the dragon horns were evil, wow, you are so smart. Somebody got them an award, poet laureate, Nobel Peace Prize. We also meet Jean and Anna in the paralogs. I don't really care much about these characters, and this is like maybe a little mean-spirited, but if you're going to hire someone to do an accent, you should hire someone who can do the accent. Listening to Jean was insufferable because I was like, wow, this actor's really talented. She plays Ino in Naruto, and she did that role really, really well. I just think overall, when you pull shit like that, it's bad for the actor and it's bad for the story. You know what I mean? Like, it's just bad all around. Next, we go to Brodia, the Kingdom of Might. Along the way, we meet a character named Yunaka, who honestly had a lot of potential, but like the narrative drops her after this one chapter. Basically, we're off to get another ring, and she's a thief and an assassin, but you don't know she's an assassin because that's locked behind supports, and I didn't fucking know that until I watched someone else's video where they were like, yeah, she's an assassin, and I was like, oh, I would not have known had you not told me.
Yeah, I have a killer's eyes.
So she's found one of the rings that we're looking for, and up until this point, the rings have been assigned to only royal characters and royal characters who do the same thing as the rings. Like, Alir and Marth are both sword fighters. Alfred and Sigurd are both horseback lance wielders. Celine and Celica are both mages. So the rings have been assigned to royals who do the same thing as the ring characters. So it's interesting that Yunaka, who's a thief who uses knives, gets the Micaiah ring, because now she has this added ability of healing, and it gives her extra utility, because that's normally something she wouldn't be able to do. And then we meet the Brodian cast, who I actually all like except for Amber. Amber is stupid, and he's obsessed with alpacas because he's from a family of alpaca farmers. And while I think that's endearing and nice, again, liking something is not an entire personality. And then, like, by contrast, in the same group, Lapis also comes from a farming family, but she hides her origins because she doesn't want people looking down on her for her status. Like, she's embarrassed that she comes from a family of potato farmers and that she's kind of hick, and that she's with people who are quote unquote out of her league, even though they constantly affirm her because she's really talented and strong. Like, that's a real character. Like, she's a real personal conflict. Diamant is cool. Jade is a character who has a hobby and a person. Sorry, this is just a funny note that I wrote. Jade is a character who has a hobby and a personality, which is unfortunately quite unique. That's funny. I like Jade. She's one of my favorite characters. And then I think Alchrist and Citrine are good ways of writing joke characters with quirks that are actually comical. Like, Allchrist is a real interpersonal conflict because he always feels like he's going to be in his brother's shadow, but at the same time, he also has this, like, submissive bit. Like, he's introduced threatening us, and then we're like, actually, we're the Divine Dragon, and then he, like, runs over and is, like, profusely apologetic. Allchrist doesn't have a vapid quirk. He has, like, a serious personality flaw that they play up for laughs.
Oh, this is bad. If you continue, I may find myself in a dangerous spot.
Aw, what's so dangerous about me?
That! Your gentle eyes and accepting smile? Please, don't look at me. Your pure heart is shining a spotlight on me. You reveal me for the waste that I am. I have to go. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Man, that guy really knows how to make an exit.
And Citrine is literally a sugar mommy, and she's so rich that she has, like, no concept of what's going on because she'll offer exorbitant amounts of money for just, like, random things.
I'm just here picking up some lunch. You can only get it at this street stall, but the taste is worth the trip. It's my favorite.
Really? If it's as delicious as you say, I'd like to try some for myself. Here, I'll treat you. Excuse me, sir. I'll take everything you have, please.
The whole stock?
Like, the fact that she's out of touch is the joke. But also, she has, like, a personality and a life because she's a noble who lives in this world. Like, I just can't stress it enough. I'm not going to talk about every single character like this, but there are characters that they do well, and there are characters that I'm like, you literally could not be in this game, and the final product wouldn't be different. So we're at about chapter 6 in the narrative. This is where we get introduced to some actual plot beyond just, like, our fetch quest. So we've traveled up through Brodia, and Brodia's in this corner, Elusia's in this corner, and they're constantly at war. Elusia is the kingdom of knowledge. They might as well just be called the kingdom of evil because that's the vibe. So chapters 6 through 11 are just about, like, the Brodian Elusian conflict. Elusia is considered evil because they worship the Fell Dragon, which is different from the other 3 big countries in this world because they all love the Divine Dragon. Ivy and Hortensia are the 2 princesses from Elusia. They do join us later, but the first fight is with Hortensia. In this fight, we see that there's, like, a red evil summoning equivalent for the emblems because when we summon them, they're blue. This ends up being important for stupid reasons later. We have 2 fights with Ivy. She's interesting because you can tell that she has doubts about her father bringing war to Brodia's doorstep and, like, trying to kill their king. King Hyacinth is basically starting a war for the rings so that he can revive Sombron, the Fell Dragon. And so Ivy has doubts about this because it brings a lot of needless casualties, and it's not really for a good cause. Like, the Fell Dragon doesn't need to come back to life. And Ivy knows this. Okay, so we're jumping ahead to chapter 10. We fight King Hyacinth, which I didn't properly establish this. King Hyacinth is the king of Elusia, and King Morian is the Brodian king. Morian is Allchrist and Diamant's dad. So by this point in the narrative, Morian has been taken and then subsequently zombified by Hyacinth. So it's a pretty cool high-stakes fight with a deep emotional pull. We still have our emblems. The enemy is still using the emblems that they have. These 2 sons are fighting their dead dad, basically the husk of his body. It's really quite tragic. Prior to the fight, too, the game warns us that there's going to be multiple chapters that happen in a row without a break, so you can't, like, stop and change your weapons or get more items or things like that. So that's another added layer of challenge that Fire Emblem doesn't always necessarily do. Anywho, in this chapter, our party fails and all the rings are taken from us, and Sombron gets revived. The rings are all stolen by Vale, which is a character that I have not talked about. We will get to her. So the group runs away, and then the game pushes us into chapter 11. The goal of this chapter is to literally run away. Vale and the 4 Hounds are after us. You can't beat them, and you've lost all of your rings. So there's a major reversal of power that happens about a third of the way through the game. Oh, you also lose the Dragonstone for a portion of this chapter. I didn't talk about that. The Dragonstone is the item that lets you rewind turns. So you lose all of your gimmicks. During this chapter, Ivy decides to defect from her kingdom and join you. She steals 2 of the rings and brings them. In my opinion, this is the game at its absolute best. Like I said, huge status quo shift. A plot important character dies. There's a big emotional weight behind it. Ivy asks to join their group right after indirectly being involved with Diamant and Allchrist's father's death. So this makes for a really interesting tension. These 5 chapters are what I will remember. And if that's any indication of the remainder of this review, I don't know what to tell you. Being a longtime fan of the series, are these plot beats revolutionary? No, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel to write competently. But they just like completely drop the ball after this because nothing interesting happens again for the remainder of the game. So next we go to the Queendom of Solm. Hortensia is being like mind controlled by the bad guys, but we get her back, and then we meet the Solmic royalty and we meet all of their retainers. I'm not going to talk about each of them individually because we run into the same problems where they're all quite vapid. Like, I'm not really behind any of these characters. So we're just going to move on. And this is the remaining 16 chapters of the game. Like, they're really bloating up the cast, but they couldn't give a fuck about making the characters interesting. Like, I don't fucking know. So the rest of the game is, for the most part, just like standoffs with the Four Hounds. And then we learn about Vale's true nature. And then there's a chapter with her. And then there's a chapter where we go back in time and we discover Alir's truth. And then there's like another chapter where we kill an image or like a reincarnation, a zombified version of Lumera. That happens. That chapter is so dumb. Let's talk about the bad guys. I haven't touched on Vale yet. She appears throughout the entire game. Like every 2-3 chapters, there's a scene with her. She's set up as a really mysterious character. Like, there's something going on with her. We'll be talking to her and then we'll turn around and then we turn back and she's gone. And then we get like a scene of her by herself, not being observed by any of the cast, where she's like, I need to get stronger. And she's like shooting lasers or something. We know she's a character of importance because literally, how could you not think that? So we see her, and then there's a hooded figure who is the person who kills Lumera in chapter 1. And then between chapters 10 and 11, she takes off the hood and the reveal is that it's Vale. We learn definitively that she's the Fell Dragon's daughter, which is like not shocking. Two-toned hair in this game matters. And seeing as we have a prominent other character with two-toned hair, they might be the other kind of dragon. You know, just if we're thinking with our brains. She's really, really nice in all of our interactions with her. And then she's comically evil in chapter 10. So you know that something is going on outside of this character's agency. She's being mind controlled / like brain hijacked. She has like a split personality that's been injected into her. At a certain point, they decide that like the brainwashing isn't strong enough. So one of the characters, Zephia, makes her this helmet that like boosts the signal. It really turns the Wi-Fi on because then she's like full evil and then the helmet can't come off. Obvi, she's not in control. She has no agency. So she doesn't even remember the fact that she like does bad things to the party. But I don't know. It just feels like what's that one HBO show where they turn their brain off and go to work? I feel like it's the ethics of that, where it's like, are you really the same person if you have 2 different lived experiences and they're just happening in one body? Anyways, the helmet gets destroyed and then she's like a late game addition to the party. This could have been good. It could have been done better. At this point, nothing in this game really has weight. They're really just throwing shit at the wall and hoping that something sticks. Also, we learned that her and Alir are siblings. Alir, surprise, is not a divine dragon. She was born a fell dragon. And that's why we go back and fight Alir in the past. It's red hair Alir. That's why Alir has 2-toned hair. Because she was born fell. And she achieved divine. Because Lumera was like manifesting it. Like, I don't really understand. The magic is poorly established. Don't ask questions. For the Four Hounds, Marnie is here because she's a coerced child soldier. She dies to undo Vale's mind control helmet. And literally, we get a scene that is supposed to be so emotional. And there was not a wet eye in the room. Mine were the only ones in the room, but they were both dry. Bone dry. I was looking at my phone because I was like, who cares? Who cares that this side character dies? If anything, she should have lived and joined us. I just think a redemption is more interesting than martyrdom. Mavier is Vale's attendant. It's so obvious that he doesn't believe in what they're doing the whole time. So you're like, okay, he's going to defect eventually. And then when Vale joins us, he does too, because we don't learn that he's Vale's attendant right away. That comes later. Grease. Oh, I mistyped his name as Gross. That's kind of funny. Haha. Did you laugh? Like if you laughed. Grease is just hot and around and evil. Like he doesn't really have a character. He is responsible for the Alir reveal, and it's so semantic and dumb. Remember earlier when I brought up that the bad guys, when they summon rings unethically or whatever, the rings glow red, and then when the good guys do it, the rings glow blue? Anyways, there's this moment where Grease is like, divine dragons summon the emblems with prayer, and fell dragons summon the emblems with commands. I don't remember the exact wording, but it's something pedantic and dumb like that, where he's like, ooh, the ritual's different. Like, I don't know. We don't know the ritual, so that doesn't matter to us. And also, the manifestation of the emblems is different. Like, the plot, this scene is so long where he's trying to be like, ooh, you're secretly evil all along, and because you were evil when you were born, this whole thing is pointless. But it's like, no, if this person has access to divine magic and is doing good things, I just don't understand what the argument is. And it's extra annoying because the plot acknowledges this immediately after, because all the characters gather around Delir and they're like, well, obviously you're not fucking evil, so we're fine. Like, sorry that this little thing made you insecure, but you have like a really strong proven track record of being the good guy. This reveal means nothing to us, and it meant nothing to me. It's really telling when your characters in universe can really easily dismiss something, because then what am I supposed to do as an audience member? Take it seriously? I can't. Anyways, last of the four hounds, Zephyr. Wow, what a flop bitch. This character, the way that this character could have been the best in the game, but they had an idiot at the wheel, I guess. This character, comically evil, no development. And then at like the very end, she's like going on, and there's like a pre-rendered cutscene. It's in the scripted cutscenes. She gets a lot of focus at the end, lots of camera time, and it's all about her like desiring with her whole being to be a mother and wanting to have a family of her own and wanting to bear Lord Sombron's children. And he was basically like babe later, and then he died. They try to play up the four hounds as like this found family, and it just doesn't work because you can't do surprise character development at the end and have me take it seriously. Like, it just doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense. Maybe if this character was portrayed as a bit more gray, then maybe I could get behind it. But up until this point, there was no nuance with Miss Zephyr. She seemed to want to snipe royalty left and right, all for, I can't think of any not inappropriate ways to say it, all to get pregnant. Anywho, we also learn in her dying moments that she's from an extinct clan of mage dragons whose skill is that they can enchant things. And also, we learn about this new magic system that I guess has impacted the world this whole time, and it comes right at the end. I feel like we were robbed of a cooler game. Like, I'm glad that they have an in-universe justification for why her magic is a little bit different and why she can craft a mind-controlling helmet and the time crystal that she gives us as like an apology as she's dying. And we can use this crystal to go back 1,000 years, and that's when we meet our past selves and we learn the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Just wasted potential, and they waited too long to get me to care about this character. Lastly, we have Sombron, Megan the Fell Dragon. He's a bad villain. Like, his motivation is actually great, but his execution is just terrible. So I feel like the rings lightly establish that there is a multiverse. So Sombron is one of these people. He is from another dimension, and he got exiled for whatever reason, and that's what brings him to the world that we're in, and he just wants to go back home. Doesn't that sound good? Just a simple, clean motivation that's personal, but he arrives in this world. I guess he takes over Gradlon, or whatever the fuck the Badlands are called, that get sunk under the water. He somehow manages to take control of those. I don't know if he was here at this planet's inception, or if he had to muscle his way to the top. Like, I'm so confused. Hybe SM hostile takeover energy. Like, what is going on? I just don't understand how he could have done this. Or maybe he just like came to this world with immense power because of his previous world. I just don't get it. Anyways, he also wants to get the 12 rings to go back home. I don't understand the need for global war. I don't know what's really going on with this like production of child soldiers that's happening. Like, you can just get the rings. But this man was like, no, I'm going to raise an army of undead. I'm going to have children. Their lives are going to be horrible because they're going to be tools for war. I'm going to gaslight this lady and promise her a baby, and then we're not going to do that. But she's really strong, and she's going to do a lot of things for me. Like, I just don't make me hate him or make me understand him. You know what I mean? Give me a good villain. Because right now, what I'm seeing is like a really fun idea for a completely different game where you have Dragon Witch Lady and this guy ported into another world, and they have to figure out how to get home. That's a plot. That's a really good plot, because the conflict comes from you being an outsider. Like, I just feel like if this game was retooled and they gave Alir his story and cut the amnesia bullshit, like, this is really fun. My mind. That's why no one is paying me the big bucks, is because I do it for fucking free. You should please subscribe. I really want to get monetized. Thank you. If you've done it, thank you. It means a lot to me. Sharing does a lot. Liking does a lot. Comments do a lot. if those things don't happen within a certain amount of time of a video being up, like just no one fucking sees it. So if you would be so kind, it really helps. Also, if you're at this point in the video and you're not subscribed, I think you have a good sense of whether or not you like me. So that's my take on the game. Was it a perfect synopsis? No. But is it everything you need? Abso-fucking-lutely. Because the game is kind of bland, and then it gets really good for 5 chapters, and then it sucks. I really wish this game continued to keep me on my toes like it did in chapters 10 and 11. Because the writing actually got good, and it subverted my expectations, not because I haven't seen anything like this before, but because the game really eases you in, and then it asks you to start taking it seriously. In general, just overall, I wish this game felt more similar in tone to Awakening and Fates. I feel like those games do a really good job of balancing serious and comedic tones without taking themselves too seriously, and it just works better for some reason, especially because they have a colorful cast of characters who we get to know well. Like, I'm not sitting here and pretending like Awakening and Fates didn't have vapid characters, but I feel like they were quirky and likable, and because those games are like 30 hours and this game is 60, and it's like really easy to access the supports and all that extra side content that's not technically in the main narrative beats of the game, having easier access to that in a shorter time frame makes me a little bit more forgiving. Like, I don't necessarily want to harp on this point, but I feel like I played this game for 60 hours and I didn't get to know 60% of the cast. Like, the support writing is not perfect in Fates and Awakening, but in Engage, like, they flop so hard. I got to know like 10 of the Engage characters, and then the other 25, I'm like, I don't know anything about you. And because building support is impossible, I'm being gatekept from content. And I'm probably not going to replay this game until maybe DLC comes out, but I really don't know. It's frustrating that this game is so mechanically successful because actually playing the game is so fun. I don't know if the battling excellence makes up for character writing and story writing that is so incompetent and forgettable. Don't feed me a story that feels self-aware in its first couple of chapters and then becomes so trite by the end that I want to skip cutscenes. I don't skip cutscenes. If I miss a cutscene by mistake, I will close out of a game and play again from the save point just to see it. Or I will Google it immediately in the moment and find it on YouTube. I don't skip cutscenes. Sorry, back to the point that I was making. The game in its opening chapters led me to believe that they were like in on the joke with how heavy-handed all these tropes were being executed, that they knew what they were doing, and they just like totally lost it. Like capital G generic. Like, what's a word for generic but taken to an over-the-top kind of space? Because that's what Lumera's death at the beginning feels like, and that's what her reintroduction as like an emotional challenge in one of the final chapters as a boss feels like, and Marnie's death and Vale's whole arc. Like, they all just feel like tropes, but turn the volume up. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it so much. I'm so upset. You're such a disappointment. Just kidding. I don't have that kind of money. I feel like I didn't compliment this game enough for being like visually really stunning. Engage is really beautiful. Really, really beautiful. And it plays really well on the Switch too. We have that at least. Okay, I think I'm done. Now that we're at the end, did you play Fire Emblem Engage? Did you like it? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you think I'm an utter piece of shit? Do you think that this is the best review that's ever happened? Let me know in the comments below. Leave a like. Leave a comment. Consider subscribing. I make new videos every week. I've been consistent. I feel like I can start saying that with confidence. I make new videos every week. Okay, I'm done. I have to pee. I should drink water.